Welcome back, everyone, to another explosive Fallout 3 exploration video.
Oh, yeah.
I'm so excited to be diving deep with you this week. Hope you're having a fantastic few days wherever you are listening to us.
I hope it's going well.
Today, we are undertaking, well, it's a monumental task, really, a three-parter.
Ambitious.
We're establishing the known facts, the wild theories, and just the sheer absurdity surrounding one of the most powerful, most consequential, and I'd say arguably most unstable protagonist in the entire Fallout universe, the Lone Wanderer.
It's necessary viewing, frankly. We're talking about the protagonist who, unlike maybe some other Wasteland saviors, achieved canonical demigod status,
Right.
solved the capital Wasteland's generational problems in less than a year, and then, according to all sources, seemingly decided they were too cool for school and just vanished, evaporated.
Exactly. So our mission today, kicking off part one of this deep dive, is to sort through this huge stack of lore, fan theories, developer notes, all of it. Yeah, cut through the noise. We need to lock down the canonical timeline up through the Broken Steel DLC and really confront that pervasive fan theory. Is the Lone Wanderer secretly like a complete psycho who just happened to choose the path of very good karma?
Well, you can't really understand the mystery of their disappearance without first understanding the sheer level of, existential power and, frankly, the psychological trauma they were wielding by age 20. It's a lot.
It's the only way to contextualize the legend. And just as a little teaser, for the rest of this three-part deep dive, we are tackling the biggest questions. Did they travel 2,000 miles to become the mysterious courier?
The big one.
Are they secretly Deacon,
Yeah.
the constantly lying railroad agent?
Interesting.
Or did they just take the Z-Tan flying saucer they acquired? Yes, a literal alien spaceship, and just say, screw this rock, I'm going to space.
It's on the table. They do have the ship.
Okay, let's start at the very beginning.
Right.
Section 1. The Vault 101, Anomaly, Canonical Origins, and Defining Traits.
The origin story.
Right, and unlike, say, the protagonists of Fallout 4 or New Vegas, the Lone Wanderer's origin story is way more specific, more canonical, mainly because we literally witnessed the first 19 years of their life, pretty much start to finish.
Yeah, we're there for it.
We know they were born on a very specific date,
Right.
July 13th, 2258.
And that date is the first massive lore nugget right there. They are born on the surface.
Not in the vault.
No. At the Jefferson Memorial, right in the middle of the first aborted iteration of Project Purity. They are not a vault dweller by birthright at all. They're an outsider brought in, which immediately makes them a contradiction,
And tragically, their mother, Catherine, she died almost immediately after delivery. Sudden cardiac arrest.
Yeah, it's brutal. And Dr. Madison, that's Lee, L.I.
Lee.
She was actually the acting nurse during the birth, which is a fantastic piece of, connective tissue. It gives us some insight into her dedication to Project Purity later on.
Following that tragedy, James, the father, he immediately suspended the project, took his newborn baby, and traveled to Vault 101.
And it wasn't an easy trip either. Sources confirm James was protected by Star Paladin Cross.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, defending them from raiders, mutated creatures along the way. It shows the level of commitment James had, to the child and the urgency of getting them underground.
This foundational lie, it's so key to the Lone Wanderer's eventual, let's say, instability. James keeps the LW's true surface origin a secret. Why? To maintain the pretense of the Vault 101 social experiment.
Which, of course, was designed to observe the effects of prolonged, uninterrupted isolation, like a control group.
Yeah, the LW's entire life is basically a controlled variable in a flawed sociological study.
Exactly. It's supposed to be this perfectly sterile, sheltered life. And we track specific canonical developmental checkpoints inside the vault, which gives us this unusually deep psychological profile compared to, other protagonists.
Right, like at age 1, they're babbling. By age 10, we had the classic birthday party. The Overseer gifts them the Pip-Boy 3000.
Standard issue.
And James and Jonas Palmer give them a BB gun. And we have these hilarious, almost mundane details. Like between 10 and 16, the LW pitches 4 strikeouts in Vault 101 baseball games.
An athlete.
Who?
Apparently.
A jock. And then the critical moment at 16, they take the Generalized Occupational Aptitude Test, the GOAT exam.
The GOAT.
He lived this entirely contained, isolated existence, knowing every single guard and resident by name, his intimate, almost familial structure that becomes central to the psychological fallout later when they're forced to leave.
Okay, let's talk canonical default traits. Because while the character is player created and gender is technically ambiguous,
Technically.
developer notes and promotional materials have leaned pretty heavily toward a specific default. There's a strong push toward a default male identity.
Yeah, the name Albert was used in promotional previews, which is clearly, an homage to the Fallout 1 protagonist Albert Cole.
Oh, okay.
And Fallout Shelter Online and Dr. Lee's own biography often refer to the LW using male pronouns, specifically mentioning James's son. So, while we have to acknowledge the player freedom, the official meta-narrative seems to paint a clearer picture there.
It does. Physically, if you dig into the game files, the default setup is mixed race.
Right, African-American mother, Catherine, and a Caucasian father, James.
Yep. Gives them the default brown eyes, dark hair, typically wearing the armored Vault 101 jumpsuit, using that N99 10mm pistol they get from Amata.
Right.
This grounding in a specific visual identity is actually pretty unusual for Bethesda, and it speaks to their attempt to give the LW like a fixed historical place. Even the Lone Wanderer beard style shows up in Fallout 4.
So, okay, we're talking about Albert, James's mixed-race son. Lived this painfully sheltered life for 19 years. Then the catalyst that kicks off the entire story sends this very specific, very sheltered individual out into the wasteland. It's monumental in its pettiness.
It truly is the ultimate midlife crisis turned apocalyptic event.
Yep.
James, after nearly 2 decades of just laying low, suddenly decides to restart Project Purity, the one thing he swore off after his wife died. And he just disappears, leaves only a cryptic note.
Okay, wait, let's pause here, because this is where the character analysis really starts getting juicy. Given James's history, hyper control, keeping the vault sealed to protect the LW, what did the sources say about his psychological state? Like, what led to this catastrophic decision?
Well, the sources suggest James was driven by 2 main factors. 1, immense guilt over Catherine's death. He saw it as his failure.
Okay.
And 2, this belief that the LW was finally old enough to handle the truth. He views Project Purity not just as his dream, but as Catherine's legacy.
Right.
So he leaves the vault not because he's abandoning his son in his mind, but because he believes the LW is ready to follow him, to fulfill their destiny together.
Wow, that's some profound self-justification, isn't it?
Yeah.
He's basically saying, I raised you perfectly to be the ultimate vault dweller, now go prove it by fixing the world I broke.
Pretty much.
The entire fate of the capital Wasteland, the survival of the Brotherhood of Steel, the ultimate destruction of the Enclave, it all hinges on a single man's decision to ditch his 19-year-old kid to complete a science project dream. What in the actual fuck, James? That is profoundly selfish.
Selfish, yes, but effective, you could say. It ensures the protagonist, the Lone Wanderer, leaves the vault. And that single act leads us directly into the canonical timeline of their world-changing actions. Turns a simple search for Dad into, a global military conflict.
Which takes us straight to Section 2 then. Achieving demigod status, the canonical ending, and DLC impact.
The power creep section.
Seriously, this is where we need to spend some real time, because the sheer density of accomplishments the LW racks up between age 19 and 20 is just staggering. It all culminates in 2277 at the Project Purity climax, the baptism by fire and FEV.
That confrontation, it's the ultimate turning point. The LW finds James finally, only for Colonel Autumn and the Enclave to immediately show up and try to seize the purifier.
Right on cue.
And James sacrifices himself, fills the control chamber with deadly radiation, specifically to halt the Enclave's takeover and deny them the clean water supply. Just stops them cold.
And this leads us to the critical recton, the change that cemented the Lone Wanderer's legend. Originally, the ending of Fallout 3 required the player, either the LW or Sentinel Sarah Lyons, to die or fall into a permanent coma activating the purifier because of the radiation.
Right, it was a sacrifice ending, but the Broken Steel DLC completely overrides that. It is now the definitive canonical ending, period.
Okay.
The Lone Wanderer survives the fatal dose of radiation, wakes up 2 weeks later at the Citadel, recovering from what's essentially a radiation-induced coma.
That's the first major clue, isn't it? That the LW isn't just resilient, they're biologically different. Superhuman, maybe?
Functionally immune to lethal radiation. It's a key power, pretty unique to this protagonist in the series. No one else just walks off that kind of dose.
Upon waking, Elder Lyons immediately makes them a Knight of the Brotherhood of Steel for their heroic actions.
Big promotion.
And crucially, canonical lore confirms the LW activated Project Purity without using President Eden's modified FEV virus. The death serum designed to poison all mutated life.
And we know this detail is rock solid. canon. Because of this obscure little dialogue line in Fallout 4,
Oh, yeah.
Deacon, the railroad agent, he makes an idle comment about the capital Wasteland water actually being drinkable now.
No way.
Yeah. This tiny throwaway line confirms the purifier was running clean water, which sets up the foundation for the successful, benevolent Brotherhood of Steel presence we see later in Fallout 4. Their whole triumph is solely attributable to the LW.
But the cleanup, it was far from over. Right, the LW's mission rapidly expanded. It went from find Dad to distribute purified water, and most critically, neutralize the remaining Enclave threat.
Which culminates in that highly tactical endgame assault on Adams Air Force Base.
This is the definitive world-changing act that secures the East Coast. The LW infiltrates Adams AFB, fights through wave after wave of highly trained, power-armored soldiers,
Elite troops.
and manages to hijack the orbital satellite array, specifically the Bradley Hercules system.
Right, and they use its remaining missile payload to just obliterate the Enclave's mobile base crawler.
Let's stop and analyze the geopolitical fallout of that action for a second. Destroying the mobile base crawler wasn't just like defeating a big robot.
No, it was decapitation.
Exactly. It functionally decapitated the organized military and logistical capabilities of the Enclave on the entire East Coast. That crawler was their mobile HQ, their supply line, their heavy artillery staging ground.
Everything.
By removing it, the Lone Wanderer single-handedly secured Project Purity and set the Brotherhood of Steel on its path to regional dominance. Full stop.
It's probably the highest single military achievement any Fallout protagonist has accomplished, just in terms of scope and lasting effect on a region. And remember, all of this happens by the time the LW is barely 20 years old. It's insane.
And we can't forget the sheer scope of the LW's other canonical adventures that just expand this legend. They participated in the operation.
Yeah.
Anchorage Simulation.
Right, where they gained access to a perfect digital recreation of pre-war Chinese-US combat.
Which isn't just like a combat rating increase in the game. They gained the tactical knowledge, the experience,
Yeah.
and the infamous Chinese stealth suit.
Making them effectively a silent, highly effective assassin with perfect military training, on top of everything else.
Then they changed the fate of the Raider City of the Pit, forced that moral choice between siding with the enslaved or the slavers.
Yeah.
Hugely impacting Pittsburgh's power structure.
Yeah, major consequences there. Then they intervened in ancient feuds at Point Lookout, descended into some real Lovecraftian horror,
Weird stuff.
and gained strange psychic powers. And it's during that adventure that we see the first explicit developer-driven textual evidence that the LW has serious self-loathing issues.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, a hint of the psychological analysis to come. It's symbolized by that strange ritual in the sacred bog.
Right.
Really dark undertones.
And then, the ultimate power grab. Mothership Zeta, this 19-year-old Vault escapee, gets abducted by aliens.
As you do.
Fights a successful revolution against the Zetan command structure, and ends up hijacking a fully functional alien spacecraft. They now have an orbital satellite weapon array and a literal starship.
It's an accumulation of power that is just profoundly unbalanced in the Fallout universe. You start as a kid looking for your dad, right?
Yeah.
And by the end of the DLC, you are an armored, night-ranked, radiation-immune, alien-slaying space pirate who commands 2 orbital weapon systems. The narrative decision to grant this level of power is goddamn brilliant for the player, obviously, but terrifying for the lore.
Which brings us neatly, and yet terrifyingly, to Section 3. The Lone Wanderer. This psychoanalysis of violent necessity.
The dark side.
Because when you stack up these canonical achievements, even if you play with maximum very good karma, the sheer scale of the violence suggests something is fundamentally broken about this character.
Exactly. This is the central paradox we need to really dig into. The Lone Wanderer can be played as a pure humanitarian, distributing water, saving orphans.
Well, Wasteland, Jesus, rather.
Right. Yet the game structure itself dictates that most of their major roadblocks, from escaping Vault 101 to taking Adams AFB, must be solved with overwhelming, often really unnecessary force.
And the Fallout 3 dialogue options. They're notoriously simplistic compared to, say, New Vegas. They often fail, right? Which just pushes the player into violence as the path of least resistance.
It often is the easiest, or sometimes the only path forward mechanically.
We look through fan discussions pointing out the absurdity of the canonical timeline. They're killing hordes of trogs with nothing but a metal cutter in the pit. That's a melee weapon.
Yeah, just wading in.
Or systematically slaughtering every single living alien on that vessel in Mothership Zeta.
Yeah.
This is a kid operating at like Doom Slayer levels of calculated, persistent brutality.
And we have to analyze the Enclave Slayer reputation from a lore perspective, too. The LW single-handedly takes down entire swaths of power-armored soldiers at Project Purity, Raven Rock, Adams AFB.
Trained soldiers in power armor?
Exactly. One source we looked at referred to the LW as a demigod of a teenager who survived lethal radiation and then soloed two major organizations, the Enclave and Talon Company, which are essentially standing armies.
Right.
This is physically, tactically, and frankly, psychologically impossible for a normal human being. Something else is going on there.
The psychological trauma starts immediately, too.
Yeah.
We can't just glide past the Vault 101 escape. Even on a good karma run, the LW kills familiar people on the way out.
Yeah, this is crucial.
As noted in multiple source discussions, every single guard the LW encounters during the escape is named. Officer Gomez, Stanley.
These are people the LW grew up with, played baseball with, probably saw every single day in the mess hall.
Yeah.
Buddies, maybe.
The sheer ability to just transition from sheltered child to cold-blooded killer in a single afternoon suggests a deeply traumatized, maybe even dissociative individual.
I think so. The trauma of their father leaving, coupled with the revelation that their whole life was a lie, it could easily cause a psychological break. They're forced to reconcile their naive, sheltered perspective with the reality of being this alpha and omega chaos agent in the Wasteland.
That ability to instantly flip the switch from pacifist to mass murderer, and it's a hallmark of profound instability.
Definitely.
And gameplay elements are instrumental in reinforcing this terrifying caricature, in the Wasteland's collective mind. The VATS system, that's VATS.
Especially in Fallout 3.
Yeah, it made the LW essentially invincible during combat animations, freezing time to meticulously target weak points.
That mechanic, when you view it through a lore lens, suggests something unnatural, like an unnatural focus, a heightened state of awareness, or perhaps even a temporary break from reality that allows the LW to process combat at superhuman speed.
It absolutely elevates them beyond just a standard hero.
For sure. Furthermore, their incredibly high SPECIAL stats, that's special, combined with powerful perks and high-level gear, means they just become a nearly unkillable force of nature. So the legends surrounding them become completely distorted. Wildly exaggerated, probably.
We found the perfect example of this in the sources. The legendary tale of the low-intelligence sledgehammer murderer.
Oh, this one's great.
The fact that a character with the lowest possible intelligence stat, who speaks like a, drooling idiot, could apparently take out Megaton with just a sledgehammer at low levels, that speaks volumes.
It does. The Lone Wanderer isn't just defined by what they did, but by the fact that anyone, regardless of intelligence or motivation, could potentially become this godlike, terrifying entity of destruction using that framework.
Think about that reputation filtering through the Wasteland. The Lone Wanderer isn't just a hero. They are whispered about as a homicidal maniac who eats bloatfly meat and K-fungus, fights death claws in a nightgown.
They are chaos personified. You can be distributing clean water to orphans 1 minute. But you also have a body count in the thousands by the age of 20, and you casually own a Zaytan spaceship. This constant dissonance reinforces the idea that the good karma LW is simply a highly functional but profoundly fucking disturbed warmonger who just happens to channel their instability toward the greater good, for now.
It's the ultimate war never changes narrative, right? Told through the lens of one person's questionable mental stability. They might have achieved peace for the region, but they themselves are kind of the living embodiment of the war they fought.
Yeah. The level of power they accumulated fundamentally made them incompatible with normal society. How could they ever just settle down?
Which makes perfect sense then, heading into Section 4. The mystery begins leaving the capital Wasteland. Given the sheer unmatched power and the implied psychological breakdown, it makes total sense that the Lone Wanderer chooses to leave. Why stick around when you've essentially become a radioactive, power-armored, alien ship-owning legend who solved everything?
There was simply nothing left for them to anchor to, really. The family goal, James's dream of Project Purity, was fulfilled, but James himself was dead.
Right.
Their literal home, Vault 101, was closed off or outright rejected them. We know that regardless of the player's choice in the Vault 101 Civil War storyline,
Trouble follows.
yeah, the dialogue option often involves Amada basically telling the LW to get lost. Because their presence, their legend, it threatens the delicate balance of the Vault experiment. They're too big, too dangerous now.
So no home, no family objective. What about the Brotherhood of Steel? They literally knighted them.
Even those affiliations were shaky, I think. The Brotherhood was never really home for the LW. It was more a means to an end, a powerful ally.
Okay.
And importantly, the Brotherhood was already starting to change, especially after the inevitable passing of Elder Lyons. His health was failing even during the game.
Good point.
Lyons' compassionate, benevolent vision, which was the reason the LW was accepted in the first place, that was destined to fade. His death paved the way for the more dogmatic, isolationist leadership of Arthur Maxon later on.
Right, the Maxon we see in Fallout 4.
Exactly, which makes the LW's position within the Barrios precarious at best. They were a savior under Lyons, sure, but potentially a threat or an ideological liability under the rising Maxon regime. Too independent, too powerful.
And let's be honest about their relationships in the settlements. Megaton, Tenpenny Tower. They were just places to dump gear, right? Stash houses. Not solid relationship.
Not really. The Lone Wanderer, defined by their solitary title, never seemed to form those solid anchoring bonds needed to settle down. It feels like the personal price of saving the world was everything else, isolation.
This is where we bring up that fascinating, although technically non-canon, entry by Moira Brown. It's in the official game guide afterward.
Oh yeah, Moira's notes.
She suggests that by 2297, so 2 decades later, the LW had kept traveling and eventually just disappeared. Her notes show their legend became so distorted that people couldn't even agree if the Wanderer was a man or a woman, a saint or a monster.
It solidifies the idea that they truly became a mythical figure, lost to time and rumor.
That entry, canon or not, it perfectly captures the character's legacy, I think. And it defines the massive chronological gap we're looking at, which is the key to part 2 of this deep dive.
The gap.
Fallout 4 takes place in 2287. That's 10 years after the main events of Fallout 3 and Broken Steel. The Lone Wanderer is only around 29 or 30 years old at that point.
Still young. Prime adventuring age.
Which leaves an entire decade of history completely unwritten. Blank.
That is the decade of legend making. And it's that void that generates the 3 primary paths of speculation, the main theories about what happened next, which we will be diving into extensively in the coming deep dives.
Path 1, the space adventurer.
Took the keys to the Zeta.
Yeah. Took off on Mothership Zeta and is now scouting the galaxy. Maybe inadvertently causing that alien ship crash we see in Fallout 4. The LW is quite literally traveling beyond the confines of the Earth.
It's plausible, given the asset they possess. Path 2. The Protector, or Bawas loyalists, they stayed on the East Coast, maybe managing remnants, fighting super mutants.
Hiking around.
Right. Maybe dying in the same incident that supposedly killed Sentinel Sarah Lyons. Or being quietly removed or exiled by the ascending Maxim regime.
Ooh, dark.
This path provides a more tragic, grounded end to the hero's tale, maybe a more realistic one, depending on how you view the Bawas.
And Path 3, the ultimate true wanderer, who simply pack their bags and possibly their dog meat, though the lore gets tangled there about which dog meat.
Always a dog meat.
Always a dog meat and just headed west. This final path, the idea that they crossed the entire continental U.S., it leads directly to the most controversial, chronologically challenging, and frankly, fucking massive theory of all.
The big one.
That the Lone Wanderer somehow became Courier 6 in the Mojave.
And that crossover theory, bridging 2 distinct character identities across 2,000 miles in a decade, that's going to be the centerpiece of our next discussion. Get ready.
Okay, so let's recap part 1. We have established the Lone Wanderer as Albert, James's mixed-race son. A 19-year-old radiation-immune knight of the Brotherhood of Steel.
Quite the resume.
They saved the capital Wasteland, single-handedly crippled the Enclave by destroying their mobile base crawler, and literally owns a functioning Zetan starship. All while retaining the psychological makeup of a highly capable, highly dangerous maniac who killed basically everyone he knew in his childhood home to escape.
They are arguably the most effective and overpowerful protagonists in the entire series, just an unstoppable force. And yet, they consciously chose to leave the stage entirely before they even turned 30, abandoning the world they fought so hard to save.
Next time in part 2, we are diving deep into that massive chronological leap and the most compelling fan theory that tries to bridge the continent. Did the Lone Wanderer travel 2,000 miles in 4 years to become Courier 6?
We will lay out the arguments for why that works, as headcanon, the circumstantial evidence, and more importantly, the definitive canonical lore breaks that pretty much shatter that theory.
Yeah, we gotta look at both sides.
We'll specifically be addressing the fatal flaw involving the first battle for Hoover Dam and the events in the Divide. Stuff that makes the Courier Wanderer crossover, strictly speaking, a chronological impossibility, at least by the established sequence of events we have.
But I want to leave you with this final provocative thought to mull over until our next deep dive. Considering the world-changing, almost absurd level of chaotic violence the Lone Wanderer was forced to enact to become a good guy, was their subsequent decision to leave the capital Wasteland an act of selfless wandering? Or was it simply the realization that they were too powerful, too broken, and frankly too much of a chaotic force to ever be allowed to settle down among the people they saved?
Sometimes the only safe place for a god, or a demigod, is somewhere else entirely, away from mortals.
Keep digging for those nuggets of knowledge, everyone, and we'll see you next time for part 2 of The Lone Wanderer's Last Stand.